Good afternoon, Miss Joni. This will be my video lecture in legal aspects in the hospitality and tourism industry. Today is October 18, 2021. It's a Monday, and this will have to do something to do with the discussion of the topics that I have assigned to you last October 11. No? So I suppose or I hope that you were able to research on the different topics because that is what we'll be discussing for today. Now, before we start, all the things that I will discuss will have the Constitution as its basis. No? Why do we say, or why is there a need for us to discuss the Constitution? No? The Constitution that we are using is the 1987 Constitution. 1987 Constitution. And when we talk of the Constitution, it is the supreme law of the land. No? Supreme law. Or we call that the fundamental law of the land. And being it is the supreme law or fundamental law, it is required that all laws, yung mga sinasabi nating RAs, what are RAs? Republic Act. No? All other laws will have to be subservient to or will have to be consistent with the provisions of the 1987 Constitution. Supreme would mean the highest law in our country. No, the highest. So all other laws passed by Congress is the instrumentality that legislates laws or RAs. So all other laws will have to be subservient to. When we say subservient to, may subordinate lang siya because it is the Constitution that is the highest law in our country. Now, in the previous meeting, I think I talked about, it was your assignment to see the meaning of the national territory. National territory in the Constitution is embodied in Article 1. No, you can find this in Article 1 of the Constitution. Okay, Article 1 would speak of the national territory. So if you were able to read it, what does it say, no? Article 1 would speak of the national territory. It says, the national territory comprises, no? The Philippine Archipelago. What do we mean by Philippine Archipelago? Miss Johnny, what do you understand by the word archipelago? Do you know what it means? When we talk of the Philippines as a Philippine archipelago, it means that when we talk of archipelago, it is like this, no? It's a body of water studded with islands. No? It's studded with or composed of islands. Studded with islands. Meron siyang mga islands, no? So if you will notice, the Philippine archipelago would be stretching from the north up to sa baba, no? So this is what we call the Philippine archipelago. All other islands in this one drawing, no, yung mga islands, different islands, will be considered as one. United as one. Meaning, if this is the Philippine archipelago, there are islands here inside, no? So even the waters within the islands, no, yung connecting the different islands, will be part of the national territory of our country, no? The waters within, yung mga waters, no, connecting the islands, the waters within, regardless of breadth, yung kanya, yung expanse, regardless of breadth and dimension, will form part of the Philippine archipelago. Also, those connecting, say for instance, from north to south, the islands within, pag nandito pa si Pangasinan, covered even the waters, no, within, regardless of the breadth or dimension, will form part of the national territory of our country. Now, this is what we call the archipelagic doctrine. Archipelagic doctrine. This is the archipelagic doctrine. This is the doctrine which says that the Philippines, no, the Philippines is treated as one united nation, no, one united nation, despite the islands are fragmented or there are waters within, no, yung mga internal waters. These waters are still forming part of the national territory. Part pa rin siya ng national territory. Okay? Remember the archipelagic doctrine, no? Okay? I did not explain that further. Basta, why is this important? Well, for you to know the extent or the extent or the dimension of our territory, dimension of the Philippine territory. Now, what does it compose? It composes of the, say, terrestrial meaning the landmass, no? Fluvial, and also the aerial domains. Aerial domains will form part of the Philippine archipelago. And also all other territories which our country has claimed, that is also part of the national territory. Now next would be, what is the next concept that I have given you? From the national territory, we move on to citizenship. Okay, citizenship. Citizenship can be found in Article 4 of the Constitution. No? Article 4 of the Constitution. It mentions the different citizens of our country. Say, it says about those whose fathers or mothers are of Philippine nationality, no? Or those who were naturalized in our country. There are four, no? Four categories of Filipino citizens under Article 4. Number one, those whose fathers or mothers are carrying Philippine citizenship, no? Those are considered as Philippine citizens. Then, those whose fathers or those who are citizens at the adoption of the 1987 Constitution, and then those who were born January 17, 1973 of Philippine mothers and who elect Philippine citizenship. Basta remember the four, no? The four classes of Philippine citizenship. There are four mentioned in Article 3, or Article 4 rather, Section 1 of Article 3. You have to memorize those. Now, the point here that I'd like to emphasize is who are natural born citizens. Natural born citizens. as compared to what we call the naturalized citizens. Naturalized citizens. Now, when we talk of natural born citizens, we are talking about those citizens who do not have to perfect or do any act. No, those who's this one. No, natural born citizens are those citizens who do not have to perform any act to acquire their Philippine citizenship. But for naturalized citizens, of course, they have to perform something, or they have to perform an act. And that act will, of course, be the process here, naturalized citizens, process of what do we call that process, Mr. Johnny? Process of naturalization. Naturalization. So here, uh, when we talk of natural born citizens, they do not have to do something or perform anything at all to acquire their Philippine citizenship. Compared to a naturalized citizen, of course, he has to go through the process of naturalization to determine his qualification as being qualified or not qualified to become a Filipino citizen. Now, corollary to this, no, we have the natural born, naturalized citizen. Corollary to this are the modes, no? Modes of vesting or acquiring citizenship. Now we have the jus sanguinis, no? And then we have what we call the jus soli. Now it's not pronounced as juice, no, but jus. This is Y, pronounced as Y. Jus sanguinis and jus soli. Then we have naturalization. These are the modes of acquiring citizenship. No? What is jus sanguinis? Well, when we talk of jus sanguinis, we talk about the jus sanguinis principle would be acquisition of nationality or citizenship by virtue of blood. By right of blood, no? By virtue of blood or by right of blood, no? So this means that you can acquire Philippine citizenship, you can acquire your citizenship based on the nationality of your father or mother. Now for you solely, it is acquisition of citizenship by virtue of place of birth. By virtue of place of birth. No? So there is a distinction. One is because of blood, the other is by virtue of place of birth. Then this naturalization I discussed to you earlier, there is a process, usually a proceedings. No? Proceedings. There is a proceeding or proceedings to undergo to determine your fitness to become a national or citizen of a certain country. No? So here, these two will automatically attach, no, yung citizenship mo. But this one, it will not automatically attach because there is a process or proceedings that you have to go through in order to acquire your citizenship. Now, my question here is, which one does the Philippines follow as a nationality principle? Is it jus sanguinis or jus soli? Johnny, the Philippines follows this nationality principle, no, jus sanguinis. The United States follows the jus soli, no. So here, for us, if you will take note of the Constitution, it says here, those whose fathers or mothers are citizens of the Philippines. No? So if one of your parents, so for instance, your father or your mother is a Filipino citizen, automatically the citizenship of the Philippines will also attach to you because of blood relationship. But say for instance, uh, supposing that you are born in the United States, no? You are born in the United States, but then again, your father is an American. What citizenship do you have? You were born in the Philippines and you have an American father. What citizenship do you have? Well, from the viewpoint of the Philippine law, you are a Filipino citizen by virtue of this principle, no jus sanguinis, because you have your mother as a Filipino citizen. But by virtue of the law of the United States, you are also an American citizen because they follow the jus soli nationality principle. Place of birth. You were born in the United States, so the US government can also claim that you are an American citizen because they follow this nationality principle. Clear? Okay, we will not belabor this point. I think you have read a lot by virtue of your assignment. So I will proceed to the next principle that I have assigned to you. Next would be the national economy. National economy and patrimony. No? National economy and patrimony. Patrimony would be the property of the country. Now, I have to correlate the discussion of this with regard to yung mga nationalized, no? Nationalized industries through capital restriction. No? Nationalized industries. So I have to relate my discussion on national economy and patrimony with the nationalized industries restricted by capital. So here, of course, when we talk of national economy and patrimony, what we are after will be the fair. Now, in general, the principle here is fair and equitable distribution of what? Wealth, opportunities, and privileges. No, this is always the parameter or the yardstick. No, when we talk of the national economy and patrimony, there should be fair and equitable distribution of wealth. Now, what we are trying to avoid here would be what we call monopoly. No, yung mga pag-create ng monopoly or unfair competition. We will discuss this later on. Unfair competition or even what we call the restraint of trade. No, restraint of trade. This is what we are trying to avoid because when we talk of the national economy and patrimony, what we are after is always the fair and equitable distribution of wealth. No, fair and equitable distribution of wealth. Equitable distribution. No? This is always our guide. No? And when we talk of a fair and equitable distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges, what we are after is always the common good. Clear, Ms. Johnny? This is our guide, always the common good, meaning there should be no monopoly, there should be no unfair competition, there should be no restraint of trade. Now I talk about nationalized industries. No, when we talk of nationalized industries, what are these, Miss Johnny? Based on your readings, no? The term nationalized meaning it is only reserved for Filipino citizens, no? Nationalized, no? Definitely, no foreign investments will have to be accepted because these industries are nationalized, no? In short, what we are after is the capital, what? Uh, capital investment should come from Filipino citizens. Only Filipino citizens could invest in these industries. Now, let us identify the particular industries which we consider as nationalized. No, I will just mention some, but if you want to know further, uh, you research on the foreign investments law of 1991. No, you could see all the industries there that are nationalized, wherein you could even see the capital requirement for each industry. Now, for nationalized industries, I could mention, say for instance, mass media. No, when I talk of mass media, television, newspapers, no, and the production of informative materials. Now, mass media is nationalized, a nationalized industry. Second would be retail trade. Retail trade, yung mga tingi-tingi, yung nagtitinda dyan, mga sari-sari stores or yan, yung supermarkets because they're involved in retail. Is also a nationalized industry. What else? Cockpits, no, yung sabungan. No? They are also nationalized industry. Fourth would be what we call the manufacture manufacture of firecrackers, no? Especially for New Year, firecrackers and pyrotechnic services. Pyrotechnic, those that you see up, pyrotechnic services. This is also nationalized. But what I'd like to emphasize, aside from that, is the practice of any profession in the Philippines. Practice of any profession. Say whatever profession is that, nurse, doctor, lawyer, practice of any profession, it is also nationalized. Only Filipino citizens can practice their respective professions because that is a nationalized industry. Okay? Clear? Miss Johnny? So, I will take a look again for your assignment. Now, it says here, what are the different modes of acquiring citizenship? No, this is number 2. I think I have discussed this earlier. The different modes of acquiring citizenship are, by way of a review, Miss Johnny again, use sanguinis, no? By blood, no? By blood, by virtue of blood, no? Second would be use soli, by place of birth, place of birth. And then the third would be naturalization. Now I have discussed this earlier, so I need not belabor my point. You just have to review what I have said earlier. So these are the 3 modes of acquiring Filipino citizenship. Okay, so I will proceed now so that we could move further with our discussion. The next one is, so I said this what are the three inherent powers of government? Okay? What are the three inherent powers of our government? Inherent meaning it is there, it is built in. Inherent powers, it is understood na mayroon siya dito. Our government has three inherent powers. The first power is the power, uh, the police power. No? The first is police power. No? What is police power? Well, by virtue of the word police, the government has the power to regulate. No? When we talk of police power, we talk about the government having the power to regulate. What does it regulate? When we say regulate, meaning we restrict, no? The power to regulate persons, places, activities, etc. No? Why does it regulate? For regulate persons, places, activities for public health and safety. Remember this. The government can step in to regulate the actions of persons, places, or even certain activities if it will be detrimental to public health and safety. Okay, so that is one of the powers, inherent powers of government. The second is, we have to move fast. Anyway, this is your assignment. I suppose you have read entirely. The second is the power of eminent domain. Power of eminent domain. This is otherwise known as expropriation. Expropriation. Expropriation would involve forcibly taking. No, the government can forcibly take your private property for what purpose? Only for public use. No? So you cannot say, for instance, you have a property there along the highway, near along the highway, the government can take that because they would like to widen, for instance, the road. So you cannot say that that is private property. They can forcibly take your private property and use it for public purpose. But there is a requirement. Before the government can take your private property, you will be paid just compensation, that we call. They cannot just take your property without paying the equivalent value of the property taken. Okay, so this is the power of eminent domain. The third inherent power is what we call the power of taxation. No, power of taxation. What is this power, Miss Joni? Well, when we talk of taxation, this is the lifeblood of the government. Lifeblood of the government. Lifeblood meaning this, the money the money that is raised, no, by virtue of its power to tax, is used to defray meaning to pay, to defray costs for public services. No, for public services. So definitely the government has to raise revenues through taxation because it has to maintain itself, no, in the delivery of basic social services. So what is the power to tax? Well, the power to tax is to impose what does it impose? Certain burdens or charges. No? Where will it impose? Against persons, against persons' property, or properties and also property rights, no? Dito siya kukuha ng pagbibigyan, no? Could be persons, properties, or property rights. But they have to impose certain burdens or charges to raise, what will it raise? Revenues. No? It will raise revenues so that the government will have something to spend as part of its function of delivering basic social services. Okay? Those are the inherent powers of the government that you have to know. Inherent would mean is automatic. No, it is built in. It is part and parcel of the power or the powers of the government. Now we move on to certain constitutional provisions like what is meant by rule of law. Rule of law. Well, by the meaning of the term rule of law, what do we mean by this, Miss Johnny? When we talk of the rule of law, we are governed by laws and not by men. Governed by laws, meaning these laws will have to support equality of its citizens. Equality of citizens. What we mean by this is all laws are geared toward the application to all citizens. No, there is no favored citizen. There is no privileged citizens. There will be no favorite citizens. No, all the laws will have to apply to everyone, no, regardless of social status, regardless of age, sex, creed, or whatever distinction there may be. No, governed by laws and not of men. No, these laws will have equal application to all. And the rule of law, what we are trying to avoid, what we are trying to avoid is the arbitrary. No arbitrary, meaning arbitrary use of power. No, meaning you cannot just say that you are powerful because you are in government. No, so what will be the prevailing rule would be the application of laws in our country because laws are legislated to protect everyone. No? That is what we mean by the rule of law. Okay, next, what's the principle that I have given you? Then, Ms. Johnny. Next would be, well, this one is a long discussion, no? Due process. What do we mean by due process? Well, when we talk of due process, you will be you will be given an opportunity, accorded an opportunity to be heard. No? So you have the right to be heard because for every story, there are two sides. No? So it will not only be one side that will be heard, but both sides. If there are only two sides, no? Due process. Now, when we talk of due process, we are talking about what? Two aspects. No? There are two aspects of due process. One is what we call procedural due process, and the other is what we call substantive due process. Substantive due process. When we talk of procedural, we are talking about the process of hearing, no? The side of the parties involved in the litigation. Substantive would be the substance or the law itself, no? The the law itself, the substance of the law itself, no? So for due process, there are two aspects, no? Procedural due process and the substantive due process. One, when we talk of procedural, we are talking about a process. When we talk about the substantive aspect of due process, we are talking about the law itself, the substance of the law, the applicable law, no, for the controversy or the topic of litigation. Now, procedural, I told you earlier that when we talk of due process, this is an opportunity for you to be heard. And how is that done? Well, by virtue of procedural due process, we have hearing or what we call trial. Now, for substantive aspect, of course, we will take into consideration the applicable law. Okay, clear? So there are two aspects, procedural due process and the substantive due process. Okay, so this is just an overview, Ms. Jody. And then we have the equal protection of the laws. Well, I discussed this already earlier. Equal protection of the laws. No? Equal protection of the laws. No? Meaning, you do not have to discriminate anyone because laws are applicable to all, regardless of social status, regardless of age, of sex, of creed, or whatever distinction there may be. Now, Section 1 of Article 3, Bill of Rights. Now, this one, Article 3 would be the Bill of Rights. Okay, let us discuss this later, no? Section 1 of Article 3, if you have the Constitution, Ms. Jami, you have to read. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall any person be deprived of equal protection of the laws. That is where you could find this, no? Section 3 of Article 3 of your Constitution. The equal protection of the laws clause, no? Which means there should be no discrimination at all, in any form or in any extent. No discrimination in any form. No, no discrimination at all, but what is meant here is that you have to apply the law or laws with equal force and effect, regardless of social status, regardless of creed, regardless of sex or age or whatever distinction there might be. Okay, I think I have to stop from there because it is already quite long. No? So I will just give you your assignment in writing. No? I will just be putting it in our group chat. Okay, good afternoon.